Um, in this video, I'm going to be showing you some of the common mistakes people tend to do when they're doing this. When they're doing this test route. This is one of Mitcham test routes. So at the moment, the test center is closed. So I'll begin towards the end of the red house, the pretty much the street where you come from the test center. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the road and we're going to be turning right. Now, the first common mistake people tend to do, so there are two. First, let's suppose the route we're going to be taking today, we're supposed to be turning right at the end of the road, right? Now, the first mistake somebody is going to do is just the positioning of the car. Because as you come to the end of this road, if you can see, it's quite a wide sort of road. So if you're going to be turning right, you need to position yourself on the right. You need to keep right, just left of the center, which should be about this way. Otherwise, if you end up positioning on the left side, because there's plenty of room on the left, that means a car might come from behind you and then he's going to position on the right side where he should have positioned, and then that could potentially be a problem on your side. Now, the other mistake people tend to do would be, so when you come to the end of the road, it's quite a bit of a closed junction. You've got some sort of you can't really see what's coming in on the right. So what people tend to do, they tend to sort of stick out a little bit too much to be able to see what's coming on the right side. But the problem here is they end up sort of stopping slightly into the road, which means you're going to be causing obstruction to the cars coming from your right, which could potentially be another problem. So you need to try and keep the car just by the giveaway lines and maybe try to lean a bit forward. That way you could be able to have a better view of what's coming from your right without having to stop too far into the middle of the road. Okay, now we've turned right after checking, making sure it's clear. Now, the other mistake people tend to do on that junction, as you come out to turn right from the test center, because it can be quite a very busy road sometimes, so you could be inclined to sort of pull out of the junction to stop in the middle of the road. But the problem here is, if you do that, there is a chance you could end up causing the cars which are coming from the right side to stop and wait for you, which means, again, that could be another problem. So you should make sure that you can be able to see you should make sure that the traffic is clear on both sides before you try to pull out of the junction. Now, okay, this one. Now, the other mistake you might possibly do on this road, because this is the 30-mile road, but sometimes people tend to, because I think they're still a bit nervous, so they end up not maintaining the right sort of speed, driving a bit too slow on this road, probably doing about 20, 25, which again is a little bit under the sort of speed limit. So you should try and maintain the right speed, which should be 30 miles an hour. Now, the next part of the route, we're going to be approaching the roundabout, Lombard roundabout. We're going to be turning the route. We're going straight ahead at the roundabout, third exit, signposted for Croydon. Now, the mistake people would do at this point, okay, we're approaching the roundabout. So there are two lanes. So approach the roundabout in the left-hand lane, and then do the observations to your right. Make sure it's clear, and then you merge onto the roundabout, keeping it left. And then once you get to the center of the second exit, that's when you put your left signal and then exit the roundabout. So on that roundabout, the common mistake people tend to do would be you're going straight ahead at the roundabout, third exit, but then somehow the first mistake would have been approaching in the wrong lane. So the correct lane would have been the left lane, and then putting the signal at the wrong time. So the signal would be coming on in the middle of the second exit. And then maybe the other mistake could be not checking your mirror before the left signal and then exit the roundabout. Or the other mistake could have been pulling out into the roundabout when you've got cars coming in from your right. Again, you should be looking out for that. Make sure that you don't end up causing obstruction you don't pull out of oncoming traffic from the right. Okay, now, we'll move off. Now, the next thing would be when you're doing this route, they would normally ask you to pull up on this road, which can get quite very busy. Finding a good spot where to pull up, it can be a bit of a problem. And then you pull up, and then when you get to move off, the other common mistake would be, because it's a very busy sort of road, it can take a lot of time to actually be able to get a good gap where it's sort of to merge with oncoming traffic. So again, the point here is you need to be careful before you decide to merge onto the road. And don't feel inclined, because the mistake people tend to do is they try to move off when there are cars coming from the right, when there's oncoming traffic. So you end up pushing yourself into the situation where you could have waited. And the reason is because you feel you're taking too long, it's very busy. So again, the point is don't rush it. Take your time, wait until you've got a good gap where you can be able to move off without causing the cars coming from behind to slow down. Okay, so you've checked your mirrors, you put the signal, and then you move off. Now again, the common mistake here would be either not putting the signal as you're moving off, or not checking your final blind spot when you're moving off. So we need to make sure that we get the final blind spot check done, and making sure that you don't cause oncoming traffic, you don't cause them to slow down. So there's a cyclist there. So again, you have to give that cyclist plenty of room before you overtake the cyclist. Now the next common mistake would be when you're approaching the flyover. Now it's a positioning fault. So the mistake would be you end up keeping in the right hand lane. So that's a mistake. We should try and maintain the car in the middle lane, and then once we get to this bit, then we move over into the left lane. The left lane is ideal because that's the position we maintain for normal driving. So always try and maintain the car in the left-hand lane as much as possible. Now this is the 40-mile zone, the 40-mile stretch. Again, you need to try and maintain progress when you're on this road, so that you don't end up causing traffic behind to overtake you if there's no need to do that. Now the next part of the route, we're going to be approaching the roundabout. We're approaching the roundabout to turn right, third exit. So we're approaching the roundabout. So the first thing we're going to do is check your mirrors, center and right, put your right signal, and then you try to move over into the right hand lane, and then with the right signal still on, you're approaching, you look into your right, make sure that it's clear, and then if it's clear, then you merge. So that's the first exit, signal still on, in the right hand lane. Second exit. Now once you get to the middle of the second exit, put your left signal and then move over into the left hand lane, and then exit the roundabout in the left hand lane. And then here we're going to follow directions for local traffic, which is going to be following the bend ahead. And the mistake people tend to do here is they tend to take the left turn, which is okay. Let me first pull up and then I can explain those two situations. That's the funnel bend, so you need to be looking out for that bend. You don't need to stop, but just slow down a bit and then try to. Okay, I'll pull up here for a bit. Now I'm going back to the roundabout. So when you're approaching that roundabout, the common mistake people tend to do would be not moving over into the right hand lane in time. And the problem is, if you don't move into the right hand lane in time, that road is very busy. It's a 40-mile zone. It's a 40-mile-per-hour zone. So the cars come in a little bit too fast. And sometimes the traffic can be a bit too heavy, to the point whereby if you try to move over into the right-hand lane a bit too late, you're not going to be able to do it because you've got a queue of traffic coming on in the right-hand lane. So to avoid that problem, you need to try and move over into the right-hand lane well before, to avoid getting stuck in the middle lane. Now, so the other mistake would be you realize that you need to have been in the right lane, but then you've realized a bit too late, and then you end up sort of pushing into the right lane without taking due care, or without taking into account the speed of oncoming traffic. So you end up sort of pushing in and you cause them to slow down. Again, that could possibly give you a serious fault. Or you just sort of move into the right-hand lane without even checking the mirrors properly to see if there's any cars coming in the right-hand lane. So again, that's something you need to be looking out for. The other mistake could have been, as you sort of merge onto the roundabout. As you sort of merge, you haven't put the signal to exit the roundabout. Again, you need to be looking out for that. Now, the next situation was when we got to directions for local traffic. That sign is coming. The sign is after the junction. So the common mistake people tend to do is turning left before the junction, before the sign, which is again is a fault, because the signs would normally come before the junction. So don't just look out for that. Okay. Okay, so we continue going ahead, and then now as you're going down this road, there's a mini roundabout coming up. Now again, the common mistake here would be sort of not giving way to the cars coming in from your right. So we need to be looking out on the right, make sure that there's nothing coming in, and then it's quite open, so you can be able to see without having to sort of stop, but slowing down to have a good observation. Then we continue ahead. Now at the traffic lights, we're going to be turning right. So you check your mirrors first, center and right, put your right signal. And then, now the mistake here is, this road is quite narrow. Again, you need to try and keep as far right as possible so that you don't end up sort of clogging both lanes. And the other mistake is this traffic light as you're turning right. Again, people tend to misjudge that, and then they end up stopping when it's not really for them, it's for the cars coming from behind. And then they would normally ask you to pull up on this road. Now the mistake here is stopping. There's a bus stop. Okay. Now the mistake here is, if you stop on this road, there's a bus stop on the right side. You shouldn't really be stopping this close to bus stop. So you would have had to go a bit further up past the bus stop, then you can pull up there. Okay. And then we'll continue with the rest of the route. And then at this point, we're coming towards five-way junction. Now again, there are a couple of different routes which we can take from here, but the one I'm going to be taking, we're going to follow directions for Wellington, which would be straight ahead at the junction. So we just go straight ahead, and then now there are 2 lanes here which you can use. Now there are actually 3 lanes. Now you can use either of the first 2 lanes. You can either use the left or the middle lane for going straight. But the left lane is more ideal because, yeah, and then, but you can still use the middle lane as well if you're coming straight. So this is the 30 miles. This is 30 mile per hour road. So you need to be mindful of the speed so that you don't end up driving a bit too slow. Now the next direction here, we're going to be following directions for its round shore, which is going to be turning left. So if you look on the left, the sign is there. There's a little sign. It's there. So that's round directions for round shore. So you check your mirrors, center and left signal, and then you'd be turning left at the traffic lights. And then again, this is almost like a mini slip road. The mistake here would be not having a good observation before you merge onto that onto this road. You need to slow down pretty much and then have a good look to make sure there are no cars coming in on the right. Now, the next mistake is here. We've got the giveaway signs. So the traffic, the oncoming traffic have got the right of way. So you need to make sure that you give way to the cars coming towards you. And you have to stop in the little lay-by there. And then, now the speed limit on this road, you need to be, it's a 20-mile zone, so you need to be careful about that, so you don't end up overspeeding. Now we come to the mini roundabout. We're going to be turning right at this mini roundabout. So again, you check your mirrors, center and right, put your right signal. Now on this mini roundabout, this is a bit of a closed one. So the mistake would be approaching a bit too fast, not being able to slow down enough to look and see what's coming from your right. So you need to slow it down, pretty much drop it back to gear number 1, and then you can be able to sort of come in nice and slow, looking out, make sure there are no cars coming from your right before you sort of merge, before you sort of merge. Now again, they would normally ask you to pull up on the left here, which is pretty much straightforward. It's not a very busy sort of road, so you wouldn't normally get, you wouldn't have to deal with the mistake people tend to do would be putting the signal before the junction, because I think the junctions are quite close. So you need to be mindful of that, so that you don't put the signal, may wait until you've gone past the junction, then you put the signal and then you pull up. And then continue going ahead. Again, speed bumps, just try and avoid hitting the speed bumps too fast. Now, I'm coming to the end of this road. We're going to be turning left. Again, you can see we've got a no entry sign there, so you shouldn't really be going straight across into the no entry. So you'd be turning left. Now this is the one way. So once you turn left onto this one way, you need to try, again, it's quite a narrow sort of road, so try and keep the car pretty much in the center of the road so that you don't end up getting too close to the parked cars on the left or the right. So just keep it right in the middle. Now at the end of this road, we'll be turning right. Again, it's a one way, but the road is not wide enough, so you just position pretty much in the middle, and then so you come out, do your observations. Again, the other situation with this junction, there is a tree on the right. I don't know if you can see it, but it's that tree there, it can cause some bit of obstruction. So you need to try and edge. In fact, the best way to do a good observation, if you come too close, then you end up sticking out. So if you come this far, the tree is still blocking my view, but now I'm beginning to sort of almost stick out into the middle of the road. So the best option would be try to step back so that you can be able to see before you get too close to the tree, and then from that position you can be able to see what's coming in on your right, and only once you see it's clear, then you sort of just come out without causing yourself that problem. Now at this point at the traffic lights, we're going straight. Okay, let's see, we're going straight here, so this is a bit straightforward. Again, if you look ahead, it's a one-way, so we're following the road ahead. Now as you approach this junction, again, you're expected to follow the road ahead, but if you can see ahead, there's a no entry. So that's another common mistake, because if you don't spot that no entry, you could easily end up going straight into the no entry. So you need to sort of follow the road to the left. And then, now when you come to the end of this road, we're turning right. Now this is the one way. So the other mistake people tend to do would be positioning a bit too far to the left. So the correct position, you would need to position more to the right side, and then again edge out. There's no traffic coming on this side, so then you turn right. And then at this point, again, this is the no entry. So these cars, the cars parked here, they tend to get very close to the road. So pretty much the gap tends to be very tight. So if you come in a bit too fast, you could easily end up too close to those parked cars. So you be mindful of that. Come in a bit slower so that you don't end up too close. At the end of the road, we're turning left. Again, the other mistake people tend to do here, there's a slight bit of it's like an uphill sort of situation. So if your clutch control is not very good, you could easily end up stalling as you're merging onto this road. There's a slight incline, so you need to try and make sure that if you can use the handbrake, then get the car to a good biting point, set some gas, and then to avoid stalling as you're trying to move off from there. Now this road is a bit too narrow as well. The mistake people tend to do is sort of it's a bit too narrow, so you end up positioning. It's more of a steering fault, so you end up going over into the right lane or going into the opposite side of the road because your steering is a bit off. And people also, it's a 30-mile zone as well, so it's sometimes you can't really tell whether it's what's the speed limit here, but it's a 30-mile zone. And then we're coming to the end here, we're turning right. Again, you can see the road markings for position for turning left and for turning right. You need to keep on the right side and then come out. And again, when you come to this point, another mistake you tend to do is not stopping in the right spot, and then also maybe sticking out a bit too much. Traffic tends to be very busy on this road as well, so you need to be mindful of that so that you don't end up pulling out of oncoming, crossing the path of oncoming traffic. You need to take your time. So this is a bit straightforward here. Now the next instruction would be turning right, directions for Croydon. Again, if you look at this sign coming up, people tend to struggle to understand how to read it. But if you look, Croydon is on the bottom there. That would be turning right. And now there are 2 lanes for turning right here. Now again, try and keep it in the middle lane. People tend to go into the right-hand lane, which again, you can use it, but the problem is, when you come to turn right here, if you keep in the right lane, then you might have a problem once you turn right. So I keep in the left lane so that once I start turning right, I can try and maintain the car in the left lane when I turn right. If you use the right lane, that means you're going to end up into the right-hand lane, and that means you have to struggle to get back into the left lane. Now the other situation is the box junction behind there. I don't know if you see the box. So the box junction, you need to try and avoid stopping that box junction. Keep it clear. Now there's another box junction ahead of me here. I don't know if you can see it, but again, you need to try and keep that box junction clear. Don't stop in that box junction.